The moment Maria Salazar stepped off the stagecoach in Red Cloud, Nebraska, on a scorching afternoon in July 1882, she knew her arrival would stir trouble. The dusty main street stretched before her like a gauntlet, lined with weathered buildings and curious eyes peering from behind glass windows. Maria clutched her carpetbag tighter, feeling the weight of judgment settling on her shoulders even before anyone spoke a word. Her dark hair was pinned beneath a modest bonnet, her dress travel-worn but respectable, yet the whispers had already begun. She had been warned in her letters that Red Cloud was not particularly welcoming to Mexican women traveling alone, especially one rumored to be the daughter of a man who had fought against American expansion in the borderlands 20 years prior. Maria needed provisions. The small inheritance from her deceased aunt had purchased her a tiny plot of land 3 miles outside town, and she intended to make something of it, to build a life away from the painful memories that haunted her in Santa Fe. But first, she needed supplies: seeds, tools, fabric, flour. The basics of survival. The general store stood in the middle of the street, its painted sign promising dry goods and fair prices. Maria squared her shoulders and walked through the door, the bell above jingling to announce her presence. Inside, the proprietor, a thick-waisted man with graying whiskers, looked up from his ledger. His expression shifted from curiosity to something harder when he took in her features, the color of her skin, the slight accent she carried. "Can I help you?" His tone suggested he would rather not. "I need supplies," Maria said clearly, refusing to let her voice waver. "I have a list and money to pay." The man set down his pencil slowly. "I'm afraid we are not taking new accounts at this time." "I am paying cash, store policy," he said flatly. "We serve established customers only." Maria felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her composure. "I see. Thank you for your time." She walked out with her dignity intact but her heart sinking. The mercantile across the street yielded the same result, though the woman behind the counter at least had the decency to look apologetic as she turned Maria away. The boarding house refused her a room. The restaurant claimed to be fully booked, though Maria could see empty tables through the window. By the fourth rejection, Maria stood on the wooden sidewalk, her jaw clenched against the frustration and humiliation burning in her chest. She refused to cry in front of these people who had decided she was unworthy before knowing a single thing about her character. Shameful. The single word, spoken in a deep male voice, made Maria turn. A tall man stood a few feet away, his broad-brimmed hat shading eyes that held something she had not seen since arriving, sympathy mixed with anger. He was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-bronzed skin that spoke of years working outdoors, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and an expression of barely contained frustration. He wore dusty work clothes, practical boots, and a leather vest. Everything about him suggested a man who earned his living with his hands. "Excuse me," Maria said, uncertain if he was speaking to her or about her. "I said it's shameful," he repeated, louder this time, his gaze sweeping across the storefront windows where faces quickly disappeared. "The way this town is treating you, madam, it's shameful and it's wrong." He stepped forward and removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair slightly too long. "Ethan Young. I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles west of here. Maria Salazar." She hesitated, then added, "I recently purchased land near Crooked Creek." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "The old Patterson place. Good land if you treat it right." "I intend to." Maria studied him warily, waiting for the inevitable dismissal, the polite retreat. Men did not typically insert themselves into situations like this, especially not to defend women like her. But Ethan surprised her. He settled his hat back on his head and gestured toward the general store. I need to pick up some supplies. Would you mind accompanying me? Perhaps if they see you are with an established customer, they will reconsider their position. I do not need charity, Maria said, her pride stinging. I am not offering charity, Ethan replied evenly. I am offering basic human decency, which seems to be in short supply in Red Cloud today. You can accept or refuse, but either way, I intend to make my opinion known. There was something in his steady gaze, a genuine quality that made Maria trust him despite her better judgment. She had learned to be wary of men offering help, knowing how often such offers came with strings attached. But Ethan Young's eyes held no calculation, no expectation of anything in return. Very well, she said quietly. They walked together back to the general store, their footsteps echoing on the wooden boardwalk. Ethan held the door open for her, and they entered together. The proprietor's expression soured immediately. Ethan, he said shortly, George. Ethan's voice was pleasant but carried an edge. I need to place a large order, but first, I believe this lady was here earlier and received poor service. I told her we are not taking new accounts. She is paying cash from what I understand, Ethan said. And last I checked, your sign out front does not say anything about refusing customers based on their heritage. George's face reddened. Now see here, Ethan, I run my business how I see fit. And I spend a considerable amount of money in this town, Ethan replied, his voice dropping lower, more dangerous. As do the 15 men who work for me. We have been loyal customers for years. But I will happily take all that business to Sterling if Red Cloud has decided to abandon basic principles of commerce and decency. The silence stretched taut. Maria stood very still, hardly daring to breathe. She had not expected this, had not asked for this confrontation. George looked between them, his jaw working. It is not personal, he finally muttered. People talk, there are concerns. What concerns? Ethan demanded. That she might buy flour, purchase a rake. The lady owns property legally. She has committed no crime. The only thing she is guilty of is arriving in a town that has apparently forgotten what it means to be civilized. Another long moment passed. Then George exhaled heavily and pulled out his order pad. Fine. What do you need, miss? Maria's hands trembled slightly as she retrieved her list. She read off the items carefully, and George noted each one, his movements stiff with resentment. Ethan stood beside her the entire time, a silent presence of support. When the supplies were tallied and paid for, George grudgingly agreed to have them delivered to her property the following day. Maria thanked him quietly, though the words tasted bitter. This was not acceptance or respect. It was merely fear of economic consequences. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Maria turned to Ethan, unsure what to say. Thank you seemed insufficient for what he had just done. You should not have had to endure that, Ethan said before she could speak. My father taught me that a person's character is what matters, not their name or where their family came from. Red Cloud used to understand that. Seems we have gotten smaller-minded in recent years. Not everyone in town feels as you do, Maria observed. No, he admitted. But not everyone disagrees either. Most folks here are just scared, following along with the loudest voices rather than thinking for themselves. They will come around. You sound very certain. Ethan met her eyes directly. I intend to make sure they do. Nobody deserves to be treated like that, Miss Salazar, especially not in a town that owes its very existence to people willing to work hard and build something from nothing. That is what you are trying to do, is it not? Yes, Maria said softly. I want to create a home, a place that is mine where I can live in peace. Then you should have the same opportunity as anyone else, Ethan said firmly. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. If you need help getting started, if you need anything at all, my ranch is west of here. The Running Y. Anyone in the area can give you directions." "Why are you helping me?" The question escaped before Maria could stop it. "You do not know me." "I know enough," Ethan replied. "I know you had the courage to come here alone. I know you have been treated unjustly and have held your head high regardless. That tells me plenty about your character." He tipped his hat to her. "I hope to see you around, Miss Salazar. Welcome to Red Cloud." He walked away then, leaving Maria standing on the sidewalk with a confused mixture of emotions swirling in her chest. Gratitude, certainly. Relief that she would receive her supplies. But also something else, something unfamiliar and unsettling. The memory of kind eyes and a strong voice speaking in her defense. She shook her head, dismissing the feeling. She had more immediate concerns than the unexpected kindness of a rancher. She needed to return to her property and begin preparing for tomorrow's delivery. The walk back was long and hot. Maria's small piece of land sat at the end of a dusty road, marked by a weathered fence and an old cabin that had seen better days. The structure was sound enough, but it needed repairs, cleaning, love. The fields beyond lay fallow, waiting for someone to coax life from the earth. Maria set her carpetbag inside and looked around at what was now hers. The cabin was a single room with a stone fireplace, a few pieces of abandoned furniture, and windows that needed new glass. But it was hers. No one could take that from her. She spent the remaining daylight hours sweeping, scrubbing, and making a list of repairs. By the time darkness fell, she was exhausted but satisfied. She ate a meager dinner of bread and cheese from her travel supplies, then lay on the narrow cot she had found in the corner, watching moonlight stream through the gaps in the roof. Sleep came fitfully, troubled by memories and uncertainties. But when dawn broke, Maria rose with renewed determination. Today the supplies would arrive. Today her real work would begin. The delivery came late in the morning, brought by a surly young man who dumped the crates on her porch without a word and left quickly, as if her very presence might contaminate him. Maria ignored his rudeness and began unpacking, organizing the seeds, tools, and household items with careful precision. She was sorting through sacks of flour and cornmeal when she heard the sound of an approaching horse. Her muscles tensed instinctively. Out here alone, she was vulnerable in ways she tried not to think about too much, but the rider who appeared was Ethan Young, sitting astride a handsome chestnut gelding. He dismounted easily and approached the porch, removing his hat. "Miss Salazar, I hope you do not mind the visit. I wanted to see if your supplies arrived and if you needed any assistance settling in." Maria straightened, wiping dust from her hands. "That is kind of you, but I can manage." "I am sure you can," Ethan agreed, "but there is no shame in accepting help when it is freely offered. I notice your roof has some gaps. I have spare shingles and a few hours this afternoon. Would you object to me making those repairs?" Pride warred with practicality. Maria glanced up at the roof, knowing she lacked both the materials and the height to fix it properly. "I cannot pay you," she said honestly. "I am not asking for payment." Ethan's tone was patient. "Consider it a neighborly gesture. When I first started my ranch, plenty of folks helped me get established. I am just passing that kindness forward." Maria studied him, searching for hidden motives, but found only sincerity. "Very well," she said finally. "Thank you." Ethan smiled, and Maria noticed how it transformed his face, softening the hard angles and making him look younger. "I will ride back and get the supplies. I will return within the hour." He was true to his word. Maria continued organizing her supplies while listening for his return, and soon enough she heard the rattle of a wagon. Ethan brought not only shingles but also new panes of glass for the windows, nails, and even a few boards for the porch steps that were beginning to rot. "You did not have to bring all this," Maria protested. "I know," Ethan said simply. He began unloading the materials, his movements efficient and practiced. "If you have a ladder, I will get started on that roof." They worked through the afternoon, Ethan on the roof while Maria tackled repairs inside. Occasionally, he would call down a question about the structure, and she would answer, and gradually a companionable rhythm developed. Maria found herself relaxing in his presence, the constant tension she had carried since arriving in Nebraska beginning to ease. When Ethan finished with the roof, he replaced the broken window panes while Maria prepared a simple dinner of beans and cornbread. It seemed only right to offer him a meal after his labor, though she worried it would seem too forward. "Smells good," Ethan said, climbing down from his ladder. He was dusty and sweating, his shirt clinging to broad shoulders. "But I should be getting back to my ranch. I have men expecting their supper." "Please," Maria said quickly. "It is the least I can offer for all your help." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "That is kind of you, thank you." They ate on the porch steps, watching the sun sink lower in the sky. The food was simple but good, and for a while they ate in comfortable silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. "My father was a miner who went bust 3 times before he saved enough to buy cattle. My mother was the daughter of a preacher who never forgave her for marrying beneath her station. They built their life from nothing, facing plenty of judgment along the way." He paused, his gaze distant. "They taught me that where someone comes from matters less than where they are headed. I wish more people remembered that." "Your parents sound like good people," Maria said softly. "They were. Lost them both to cholera 5 years ago." Pain flickered across Ethan's features. "But I try to live by the principles they taught me." Maria understood loss. "My mother died when I was young. My father was a proud man, stubborn. He fought in battles that could not be won and carried that anger until it consumed him. I do not wish to repeat his mistakes." "Is that why you came here? To start fresh?" "Yes," Maria admitted. "In Santa Fe, I was always Antonio Salazar's daughter, marked by his reputation, his choices. Here, I hope to simply be myself. Though it seems even here, people have already decided who I am." "They are wrong," Ethan said with quiet conviction, "and I will keep saying so until they realize it." "Why?" Maria turned to look at him directly. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. "Because I have seen what happens when good people stay silent. When I was 15, there was a Chinese family that tried to settle near here. The father was a railroad worker, saved every penny to buy a small farm. The town ran them off, burned their first crop. My father wanted to help, but my uncle and others convinced him to stay out of it, said it was not our business. That family left, and I saw the shame in my father's eyes for years afterward. He told me later that was one of his greatest regrets, not standing up when it mattered." Ethan met her gaze. "I will not make the same mistake." His words settled into Maria's heart, warming something that had been cold for a very long time. "Thank you," she said, and this time the words felt adequate because they carried the weight of everything she could not express. Ethan stood, brushing crumbs from his trousers. "I should head back. But I will be in town this Saturday. Perhaps I could escort you if you need to visit again." Maria understood what he was offering: protection, solidarity, a continued statement that she deserved respect. "That would be welcome," she admitted. "Saturday, then," Ethan said with a nod. He mounted his horse with practiced ease. "Until then, if you need anything, send word to the Running Y." Maria watched him ride away as twilight gathered, his figure slowly disappearing into the purple shadows. She felt something shifting inside her, a crack in the armor she had built around her heart. It frightened her, this feeling. She had not come to Nebraska seeking romance or companionship. She had come seeking peace. But as she cleaned the dinner dishes and prepared for bed that night, she found herself remembering the steady warmth in Ethan Young's eyes, the strength in his voice when he defended her, the gentleness in his hands as he repaired her home. Perhaps peace and connection were not mutually exclusive. Perhaps she could have both. The week passed in hard work. Maria tilled a garden plot, planted seeds, and began cleaning years of neglect from her property. The work was back-breaking, exhausting, but deeply satisfying. Each day brought visible progress, tangible proof that she could build the life she envisioned. On Wednesday afternoon, she had an unexpected visitor. A woman perhaps 10 years older than Maria approached on foot, carrying a basket covered with a cloth. She had kind eyes and practical clothing, her brown hair streaked with gray. "Hello," the woman called out. "I hope I am not intruding. I am Clara Morrison. My husband and I have a farm about 2 miles north." Maria wiped her hands on her apron, wary but curious. "Maria Salazar." "I know," Clara said with a gentle smile. "I heard about how you were treated in town. I am sorry for that. It was shameful." She held out the basket. "I brought you some eggs, fresh bread, and a jar of preserves. Thought you might appreciate it while you are getting settled." Maria accepted the basket, stunned by this unexpected kindness. "Thank you. This is very generous." "Just being neighborly," Clara said. "Truth is, I was too much of a coward to come sooner. I let the gossip influence me more than it should have. But Ethan Young came by our place and had some choice words for my husband about what real Christian charity looks like. Made me ashamed of myself, and rightly so." "Ethan spoke to your husband?" "To several folks, from what I understand," Clara said with a knowing look. "That man has been making the rounds, reminding people that Red Cloud was built by folks from all over, and we have no business pretending otherwise. He is right, of course. We just needed someone with the courage to say it out loud." Maria felt her chest tighten with an emotion she could not quite name. Ethan had been advocating for her even beyond their encounters, spending his time and social capital to change minds. Clara stayed for a while, offering advice about the local growing season and which merchants in Sterling might offer better prices. When she left, she extracted a promise from Maria to visit for tea soon. Maria watched her walk away, feeling the first fragile threads of community beginning to form. Saturday arrived bright and clear. Maria dressed carefully in her best day dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out the darkness of her eyes. She pinned her hair neatly and set out walking toward town, but she had barely gone half a mile when she heard the sound of an approaching wagon. Ethan pulled up beside her, his smile warm. "Good morning, Miss Salazar. I was just coming to collect you." "You did not need to go to such trouble," Maria said, though secretly she was pleased. The walk was long and dusty, and arriving in a wagon would preserve her clothing. "No trouble at all," Ethan assured her. He climbed down and helped her up onto the wagon seat, his hands steadying her with easy strength. When he settled beside her and took up the reins, Maria was acutely aware of his proximity, the solid warmth of him. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the wagon rolling smoothly over the rutted road. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I should warn you there has been some talk in town about us." "What kind of talk?" "The predictable kind," Ethan said with a grimace. "Speculation about my intentions, about whether I have lost my senses. A few of the older ladies seem particularly scandalized." "I am sorry," Maria said quietly. "I do not wish to cause problems for you." "You are not causing anything," Ethan said firmly. "Small-minded people are causing problems for themselves by clinging to prejudice. That is not your burden to carry." They reached Red Cloud, and Ethan drove the wagon directly to the main street. Maria noticed immediately that more people were out than usual for a Saturday morning, and many eyes followed their progress. Ethan seemed unconcerned. He helped Maria down from the wagon with deliberate courtesy, offering his arm. "Shall we?" he said, as if they were simply going for a pleasant stroll. Maria took his arm, her heart hammering. Together they walked toward the general store. This time, when they entered, George greeted them with marginally less hostility. "Morning, Ethan. Miss Salazar." "Good morning, George," Ethan said pleasantly. "Miss Salazar needs to place another order." The transaction went more smoothly this time, though George's politeness was clearly forced. From there, Ethan escorted Maria to the feed store, the fabric shop, and the post office. At each establishment, his presence seemed to provide a buffer, a shield against outright rudeness. But not everyone was won over. At the restaurant where they stopped for lunch, the owner initially claimed to have no available tables, despite several standing empty. Ethan's expression hardened. "Thomas, I can see 4 empty tables from here." The owner, a thin man with nervous hands, shifted uncomfortably. "Those are reserved." "Reserved for who?" Ethan's voice carried across the restaurant, drawing the attention of other diners. "Or do you just refuse to serve paying customers based on your personal prejudices?" An older man at a nearby table, someone Maria vaguely recognized from town, spoke up. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Thomas, seat them. This is getting ridiculous." Another voice chimed in, a woman's. "Honestly, this whole situation has become embarrassing. Seat the lady and let us all eat in peace." Thomas's face reddened, but he grabbed 2 menus. "This way," he muttered. They were seated near the back, and while the service was brusque, they received their meal. Maria picked at her food, her appetite dampened by the continued hostility. "I am making things difficult for you," she said quietly. Ethan set down his fork, his gaze intense. "Maria, look at me." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice made her pulse quicken. "You are not making anything difficult. These people are choosing to behave badly, and I am choosing to call them on it. That is not your fault, but your reputation." "My reputation will survive," Ethan said. "And if it does not, if standing up for what is right costs me some social standing, then that is a price I am willing to pay. My parents raised me to value principle over popularity." Maria felt tears prick her eyes but refused to let them fall. "I am not accustomed to having someone in my corner." "You do now," Ethan said simply. "For as long as you want me there." The weight of his words hung between them, carrying implications that went beyond mere neighborly support. Maria met his eyes and saw something there that made her breath catch. Affection, admiration, the beginning of something deeper. The rest of the meal passed in quieter conversation. They spoke of practical matters, farm talk, weather predictions. But beneath the mundane topics ran an undercurrent of growing connection, an awareness of each other that had nothing to do with social justice, and everything to do with the inexplicable pull of 2 people, discovering they fit together in unexpected ways. After lunch, as they walked back to the wagon, they encountered a group of men outside the saloon. One of them, a burly fellow with a sneer, called out, "Ethan Young, you must be desperate to be keeping company with the likes of her." Ethan stopped walking. Maria felt his arm tense beneath her hand. "That is enough, Pike," Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Just saying what everyone is thinking," Pike continued, emboldened by the snickers of his companions. "Town like this has standards, or at least it used to." Ethan released Maria's arm gently and stepped toward the group. "You want to talk about standards? Let us discuss how you still owe money at 3 different establishments in town. how you have been run off 2 ranches for laziness, and how the only reason anyone tolerates you at all is because your father was a decent man. You are in no position to judge anyone's character, Pike." Pike's face darkened with anger. "You calling me out? I am saying you should shut your mouth before you say something that requires me to shut it for you," Ethan replied evenly. "And that goes for the rest of you. Miss Salazar is a property owner, a hard worker, and has more integrity in her little finger than this whole sorry lot combined. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." The tension stretched taut. Pike looked like he wanted to escalate, but one of his companions grabbed his arm, muttering something about Ethan not being worth the trouble. Slowly, the group dispersed, though not without some parting grumbles. Ethan returned to Maria's side, his jaw still clenched with anger. "I apologize for that. You should not have to fight my battles," Maria said, though warmth flooded through her at his defense. "I was fighting for common decency," Ethan corrected. "That benefits everyone." They completed their errands without further incident, though Maria remained acutely aware of watching eyes and whispered conversations. When they finally left town, she felt exhausted, drained by the constant weight of scrutiny. The wagon ride back was quiet at first. Then Ethan spoke, his voice thoughtful. "I know this is hard. I know you did not ask for any of this attention, but I want you to know I do not regret standing beside you, not for a moment." Maria turned to look at him, studying his profile in the afternoon light. He was a handsome man, but it was more than that. There was a quality to him, a fundamental goodness that drew her like nothing else ever had. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Anything? Why have you never married? Surely there have been opportunities." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "There was someone a few years back, daughter of a ranch family from Sterling. Pretty accomplished, everything a man was supposed to want. We courted for nearly a year. What happened? I realized I did not love her," Ethan said simply. "I cared for her, enjoyed her company, but there was no fire, no real connection. She was content with that, ready to build a practical marriage. But I could not do it. I had seen what my parents had, that deep partnership and love, and I could not settle for less, so I ended it." She was hurt, angry. Her family was not pleased, but it was the right choice. "And since then, I have been waiting," Ethan said. He glanced at her, and his eyes held a warmth that made Maria's heart race. "Waiting for someone who makes me feel like settling would be impossible. Someone worth fighting for." The implication was clear, and Maria felt it wash over her like a wave. This was no longer just about defending a stranger. Ethan Young was courting her in his way through actions and loyalty, and now, with carefully chosen words. "Ethan," she began, uncertain what to say. "You do not have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know this is complicated. I know my attention might be making things harder for you in some ways, but I want to be honest about my feelings, Maria. These past few weeks, getting to know you, seeing your strength and grace under circumstances that would break lesser people, I admire you deeply, and I would be lying if I said it was only admiration." Maria's hands trembled in her lap. "I came here to be alone, to escape complications." "I know," Ethan said. "And if you want me to step back, I will respect that, but I hope you will not ask me to. I hope you will give whatever is growing between us a chance." They had reached her property. Ethan stopped the wagon but made no move to help her down, waiting for her response. Maria sat very still, her mind racing. She had built walls around her heart for good reasons, had learned that depending on others led to disappointment and pain. But Ethan was different. He had proven that repeatedly through actions more than words. "I am afraid," she admitted finally. "I am afraid of trusting this, of trusting you and being wrong." "That is reasonable," Ethan said. Trust is earned, and we have only known each other a few weeks. I am not asking you to make any promises, Maria. I am just asking you to let me keep showing up, keep proving myself. Take whatever time you need." Maria met his eyes, seeing patience and sincerity there. Slowly, she nodded. "Very well, but Ethan, you must understand. My life has not been easy. I carry things, memories and fears that I do not speak of. If we continue down this path, there will be difficulties beyond just town gossip." "Everyone carries something," Ethan said gently. "I am not asking for perfection. I am asking for honesty and a chance." "Then you have both," Maria said softly. Ethan's smile was radiant. He climbed down from the wagon and came around to help her, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "May I call on you again? Properly, I mean, not just as a concerned neighbor." "Yes," Maria said, and felt a smile tug at her own lips. "I would like that." Over the following weeks, Ethan became a regular presence in Maria's life. He would arrive in the evenings after his ranch work was done, helping with repairs or simply keeping her company as she tended her garden. They would talk for hours, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams for the future, the small observations that people in the early stages of connection find endlessly fascinating. Maria learned that Ethan loved thunderstorms, that he had a gift for training horses, that his favorite meal was his mother's recipe for beef stew. Ethan learned that Maria sang while she worked, that she had a talent for healing herbs, that she missed the mountains of New Mexico with an ache that never quite faded. Their relationship deepened gradually, built on a foundation of genuine friendship and mutual respect. Ethan never pushed for more than Maria was ready to give, content to let things unfold naturally. But there were moments, charged with electricity, when their hands would brush or their eyes would meet and hold, and Maria would feel the pull of attraction growing stronger. In town, attitudes were slowly shifting. The continued presence of Ethan at Maria's side, combined with Clara Morrison's friendship, and the grudging acceptance of merchants who appreciated paying customers, began to erode the worst of the hostility. It was not universal. There were still those who crossed the street to avoid Maria, who muttered disapproving comments. But the outright refusal of service ended. Progress was being made. One Saturday in late August, Ethan invited Maria to attend a community dance. It was a bold move, one that would make their relationship publicly known in an undeniable way. "Are you certain?" Maria asked when he extended the invitation. "A dance is different than running errands. People will talk." "People are already talking," Ethan pointed out with a grin. "At least this way we can give them something interesting to discuss. Besides, I have not been dancing in far too long, and I would very much like to have you in my arms, with the whole town watching and knowing you are there by choice." The possessive note in his voice sent a shiver through Maria. "Then I accept." The night of the dance, Ethan arrived at her cabin with a small box. Inside was a beautiful hair comb, delicately carved with a flower pattern. "My mother's," he said when Maria gasped at the sight of it. "She would have wanted you to have it. She always said the right woman would know how to wear it with grace." Maria's eyes filled with tears. The gesture was significant, a clear statement of Ethan's intentions. "I cannot accept something so precious." "You can and you will," Ethan said firmly but kindly. "It belongs with someone who will appreciate it, who will do it justice. That is you, Maria." She let him pin the comb in her hair, his fingers gentle and sure. When he finished, he stepped back to look at her, and the expression on his face made Maria's breath catch. It was pure admiration, tinged with desire and affection and something deeper. "You are beautiful," he said simply. At the dance, held in the church hall decorated with lanterns and bunting, their arrival caused a ripple of reaction. Conversations paused, heads turned. But Ethan kept his hand at the small of Maria's back, guiding her through the crowd with quiet confidence. Clara Morrison and her husband greeted them warmly, as did several other farmers Maria had met in recent weeks. There were some cold shoulders, some obvious snubs, but there were also more friendly faces than Maria had expected. When the music started, Ethan led her to the dance floor without hesitation. He was a good dancer, confident and sure in his movements, and Maria found herself relaxing into his lead. They moved together naturally, as if they had been dancing together for years rather than for the first time. "Everyone is watching," Maria murmured. "Let them watch," Ethan replied, pulling her slightly closer. "Let them see that times are changing, that their outdated prejudices have no place here anymore." As the evening progressed, other couples joined them on the dance floor, the initial shock wearing off. Ethan danced with Maria for song after song, making his claim clear. During a break, they stepped outside for air, and Ethan guided her to a quiet spot behind the building where the stars shone brilliantly overhead. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said, taking her hands in his. "I know it was not easy." "It was easier than I expected," Maria admitted. "Because you were with me." Ethan lifted one of her hands to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was sweet and old-fashioned, but the heat in his eyes was anything but. "Maria, I need to tell you something," her heart pounded. "What is it?" "I am falling in love with you," Ethan said, his voice low and intense. "I have been fighting it, telling myself it is too soon, that I should be sensible. But the truth is, I think I started falling for you the moment I saw you standing on that sidewalk, refusing to let those small-minded fools break your spirit. You are the bravest, strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I do not want to spend another day pretending I feel anything less than completely captivated by you." Maria felt tears spill over, running down her cheeks. "Ethan, I have been so afraid. Afraid to trust this, to believe it could be real." "And now," he asked, reaching up to brush away her tears with his thumbs. "Now I am still afraid," she admitted with a shaky laugh. "But I am also falling in love with you, and that is even more terrifying." Ethan's smile was brilliant. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," Maria whispered. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but Maria only tilted her face up to meet him. When their lips met, it was tender and sweet, a first kiss full of promise and possibility. Maria's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I want to court you properly, Maria. I want everyone to know that my intentions are honorable and serious. Even though it may cost you friendships, business relationships, anything I lose was not worth having in the first place," Ethan said firmly. "You are worth more than all of that combined." They returned to the dance eventually, but something had shifted between them. There was an understanding now, an acknowledgement of the feelings growing between them. When Ethan drove Maria home that night, he walked her to her door and kissed her again, longer this time, deeper, until Maria felt dizzy with want. "I should go," Ethan said reluctantly, his voice rough, "before I forget myself entirely." "Ethan," Maria said, catching his hand, "thank you. For everything. For seeing me when everyone else only saw what they feared." "I see you, Maria," Ethan said, bringing her hand to his heart. "And what I see is extraordinary." The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Maria's life. Her garden flourished, producing vegetables that she sold in town and in Sterling, establishing herself as a reliable supplier. Her reputation slowly improved as people saw her work ethic and integrity. But more than any of that, there was Ethan. He courted her with old-fashioned dedication, bringing her flowers, helping with heavy work, sitting with her on the porch as the sun set and talking about everything and nothing. They grew closer with each passing day, learning each other's rhythms and patterns, building the foundation for something lasting. There were still challenges. Pike and his friends made a few more crude comments, until one night Ethan lost his patience and threw Pike out of the saloon physically, making it clear that such talk would no longer be tolerated. A few women in town remained coldly disapproving, but their influence waned as more people began to accept Maria's presence. In October, as the weather began to cool and the leaves turned gold, Ethan took Maria to his ranch for the first time. The Running Y was impressive. A sprawling house with a wide porch, barns and corrals, miles of pastureland dotted with cattle. The men who worked for Ethan greeted Maria with cautious politeness that became warmer when they saw how their boss looked at her. Ethan showed her everything, pride evident in his voice as he talked about the improvements he had made, the plans he had for expansion. In the house, Maria saw touches of his mother's presence: quilts on the beds, carefully preserved photographs, small decorative items that spoke of a woman's gentle influence. "It is a big house for one person," Ethan said as they stood in the main room, sunlight streaming through large windows. "I always hoped I would find someone to share it with eventually." Maria turned to look at him, understanding the unspoken question. "It is a beautiful home. It could be your home too," Ethan said quietly, "if you wanted it to be. I know it is soon. I know we have only known each other a few months. But Maria, I am more certain of this of us than I have ever been of anything. I love you. I want to build a life with you here or at your property or anywhere else. I just want to be with you." Maria felt her heart swell. She crossed the room to stand before him, looking up into his honest, open face. "I love you too, Ethan. I never thought I would feel this way, never thought I could trust someone so completely, but you have proven yourself 100 times over. Yes, I want to build a life with you. I want to make this house a home together." Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "Marry me, Maria, be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." "Yes," Maria said, laughing and crying at once. "Yes, I will marry you." Ethan kissed her then, long and deep, a kiss full of love and promise and relief. When they finally parted, both were grinning foolishly. "I have to warn you," Ethan said. "There will be people who disapprove of this marriage. It will not be easy." "Nothing worthwhile ever is," Maria replied. "But we will face it together, and that makes all the difference." They married in November, in a simple ceremony at the church with Clara Morrison and her husband standing as witnesses. It was not a large wedding, but those who attended were genuine in their happiness. The minister, an older man with kind eyes, spoke about love conquering prejudice and the importance of community supporting its members, delivering a sermon that some in the congregation surely needed to hear. Maria wore a dress of cream-colored silk that Clara had helped her sew, with Ethan's mother's comb gleaming in her dark hair. Ethan wore his best suit, his eyes never leaving Maria's face throughout the ceremony. When they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other, Maria felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be with this man in this place. The wedding supper was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food prepared by several ranch wives who had come to accept Maria. It was a joyful celebration, with music and dancing and laughter that echoed across the prairie. As night fell and the guests departed, Ethan led Maria into their home. Their home. The words felt foreign and wonderful. That night they came together as husband and wife, and Maria discovered that physical intimacy with someone you loved, someone you trusted completely, was transcendent. Ethan was tender and patient, making sure she felt cherished and safe. Afterward, lying in his arms, Maria felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked, concern in his voice. "I am more than all right," Maria said. "I am happy, truly, deeply happy. I did not think that was possible for me." Ethan kissed her forehead. "You deserve all the happiness in the world. I intend to spend our life together making sure you get it." They settled into married life with surprising ease. Maria moved into the ranch house, though she kept her property as well, planting fruit trees that would mature over the years. She became involved in running the household, managing the books, and even helping with some of the ranch work when extra hands were needed. The men who worked for Ethan came to respect her competence and work ethic. In town, Maria's status as Ethan's wife provided a layer of protection and legitimacy that she had lacked before. Some people would never fully accept her, but they learned to be polite, to conduct business without hostility. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, attitudes shifted. Maria was no longer the suspicious stranger but Mrs. Young, the rancher's wife, a member of the community. She and Clara became close friends, and through Clara, Maria formed connections with other women in the area. They invited her to quilting circles and church socials, seeking her advice on gardening and herbal remedies. Maria found herself building the community she had longed for, the sense of belonging that had eluded her for so long. The first winter of their marriage was harsh, with heavy snows and bitter cold. But inside the ranch house, there was warmth and love. Ethan and Maria would sit by the fire in the evenings, reading aloud to each other or simply talking, his arm around her shoulders and her head resting on his chest. They were building not just a marriage but a genuine partnership, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories together. In the spring, Maria discovered she was pregnant. The news filled them both with joy and a little fear. Bringing a child into the world was always dangerous, especially on the frontier where medical care was limited. But Maria was healthy and strong, and Ethan was attentive to her every need. As her belly swelled with their growing child, Maria reflected on how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been alone, facing hostility and rejection at every turn. Now she was loved, respected, part of a family and community. And it had all begun with one man's decision to stand beside her when no one else would. Their son was born in November, almost exactly a year after their wedding. The labor was long and difficult, but when Maria finally held the squalling infant in her arms, every moment of pain was forgotten. Ethan was there throughout, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement. When the midwife placed their son in his arms, tears streamed down Ethan's face. "He is perfect," Ethan said, his voice choked with emotion. "You are amazing. Thank you, Maria. Thank you for this gift." They named him Daniel Antonio Young, honoring both Ethan's father Daniel and Maria's father Antonio. It was a bridge between their two heritages, a symbol of the family they were building together. Parenthood brought new challenges and joys. Sleepless nights and constant worry, but also moments of pure wonder as they watched their son grow and discover the world. Ethan was a devoted father, changing diapers and walking the floor with a crying baby without complaint. Maria saw him become even more protective of their small family, working harder to ensure their future was secure. In town, the sight of the Young family together seemed to soften even some of the hardest hearts. It was difficult to maintain prejudice in the face of a laughing baby and parents so obviously devoted to each other and their child. Maria noticed more friendly greetings, more genuine smiles. The walls were coming down, slowly but surely. When Daniel was 6 months old, Maria received a letter from her cousin in Santa Fe, the first contact she had had with her old life since leaving. The letter brought news both sad and liberating. Her father had died, finally releasing the anger and bitterness that had consumed him. Maria grieved for what might have been, for the father he could have been if he had chosen differently, but she also felt a sense of peace. That chapter of her life was closed. Her future lay here with Ethan and Daniel, with the community she had found through perseverance and her husband's unwavering support. The years passed, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their growing family. 2 years after Daniel came a daughter, Elena Grace, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's smile. 3 years later, another son, Thomas James, completed their family. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Maria's business sense and attention to detail complemented Ethan's skill with cattle and horses. They expanded their holdings, hired more men, became one of the most successful operations in the region. But more than financial success, they built something meaningful. A home full of love and laughter, where children of mixed heritage grew up secure in the knowledge that they belonged, that they were valued. In town, Maria became known as a woman of substance. She started a lending library, organized a school for the area's children, and used her knowledge of herbs to help neighbors when they fell ill. Her contributions to the community became undeniable, and even those who had once rejected her found themselves grateful for her presence. One afternoon in the summer when Daniel was 10, Elena 7, and Thomas 4, the family went to town together. They walked down the main street, Ethan carrying Thomas on his shoulders while Daniel and Elena raced ahead, their laughter ringing out. People greeted them warmly, the children called Maria by name, and the shopkeepers welcomed them with genuine smiles. Maria paused for a moment, looking around at the scene. This town that had once refused her basic service now embraced her as one of their own. It had taken time, patience, and the courage of one man who had stood beside her when it mattered most. Ethan came to stand beside her, Thomas still perched on his shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How much has changed," Maria said softly. "How far we have come." Ethan shifted Thomas to one arm and wrapped the other around Maria's waist. "We did this together, you and me." "You started it," Maria reminded him. "You were the first to stand beside me. You gave me the strength to keep fighting." "You already had that strength," Ethan corrected gently. "I just recognized it, and I am grateful every day that you let me be part of your life." Maria leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of her husband, watching their children play in the street of a town that now felt like home. "I am the grateful one," she said. "You gave me everything I thought I could never have: love, family, belonging. You taught this town respect, but more than that, you taught me to believe in happiness again." Ethan kissed the top of her head. "Come on, Mrs. Young, let us collect these wild children and get some ice cream. I think we have earned a celebration." "What are we celebrating?" Maria asked, smiling. "Life," Ethan said simply. "Love. The fact that we found each other despite everything working against us, that seems worth celebrating." They gathered their children and walked into the ice cream parlor, where the owner greeted them cheerfully, and the other patrons made room for their boisterous family. Maria looked around the table at her husband and children, their faces lit with happiness as they enjoyed their treats, and felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was what she had been seeking when she stepped off that stagecoach years ago. Not just a place to live, but a place to belong. Not just survival, but a life rich with love and purpose. And she had found it, thanks to a rancher who had seen her worth when no one else would, who had walked beside her through rejection and hostility until the town learned respect again. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the ice cream parlor, casting everything in golden light. Ethan caught Maria's eye across the table and smiled, that same warm smile that had first cracked the walls around her heart. She smiled back, and in that moment, everything they had been through seemed worth it. Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of doubt. Because they had led here, to this perfect afternoon, to this beautiful life they had built together. That evening, after the children were in bed, Ethan and Maria sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan held Maria's hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "Do you ever regret it?" Maria asked quietly. "The difficulties you faced because of me?" "Never," Ethan said without hesitation. "Not for a single moment. Maria, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Every challenge, every confrontation, every uncomfortable moment was worth it to have you in my life. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Maria squeezed his hand. "I love you, Ethan Young, more than I ever thought possible to love another person." "And I love you, Maria Young," Ethan replied. "More than words can express." They sat in comfortable silence as night fell, the stars emerging one by one overhead. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, secure in the love of their parents and the home they had built. Around them, the ranch hummed with quiet activity, the cattle settling for the night, the horses nickering softly in their stalls. Maria thought back to that first day in Red Cloud, standing alone and rejected on the sidewalk, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake in coming here. She could never have imagined then where her journey would lead, how that awful day would become the beginning of something beautiful. Because from that moment of rejection had come Ethan, stepping forward when he did not have to, standing beside her when it would have been easier to walk away. His courage had changed everything, not just for Maria but for the entire town. He had reminded people of their better nature, had shown them that prejudice and fear were choices, not inevitabilities. And in the process, he had won Maria's heart completely. She had come to Nebraska seeking peace and found something infinitely better. A true partner, a man whose strength complemented hers, whose love made her feel invincible. Together, they had built not just a successful ranch but a legacy of dignity, respect, and love that would outlast them both. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, noticing her faraway expression. "How grateful I am," Maria said. "For you, for our children, for this life. And how glad I am that I did not let fear stop me from accepting your help that first day." "I am glad you accepted too," Ethan said with a soft laugh. "Though I do not think I gave you much choice, I was pretty determined." "You were," Maria agreed, "and thank goodness for that. Your determination changed my life, Ethan. You changed this whole town." "We changed it together," Ethan corrected. "You never gave up, never let them break your spirit. That is what really made the difference. People respect strength and integrity. You showed them both." As the night deepened and the air grew cooler, they finally went inside, climbing the stairs to their bedroom with arms around each other. This house that had once seemed too big for one lonely rancher now rang with the sounds of a family. Children's laughter, footsteps running through hallways, the warmth of love in every room. Maria looked at her reflection in the mirror as she unpinned her hair, seeing not the frightened, defensive woman who had arrived in Red Cloud, but someone transformed by love and acceptance. The years had been kind to her, or perhaps it was happiness that kept her face soft and her eyes bright. Ethan came to stand behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders. Their eyes met in the mirror, and the love between them was almost tangible, a living thing built from shared struggles and triumphs. "I will never stop being grateful that I saw you that day," Ethan said quietly. that I had the sense to speak up, to not let the moment pass. You have made my life complete, Maria. You and our children are everything to me." Maria turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face. "And you are my heart, Ethan, my home, not this house or this ranch, but you. Wherever you are, that is where I belong." They kissed, a tender affirmation of the bond between them, then held each other close as the night settled around their home. Outside, the prairie stretched endlessly under a blanket of stars. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows that would follow. Maria thought about the children sleeping down the hall, about the community that now welcomed them, about the respect that had been earned through patience and unwavering dignity. She thought about how one person's courage could ripple outward, changing not just individual lives but an entire town's character. And she thought about love, how it could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, how it could give you strength to face any challenge. The love she shared with Ethan was more than romance, though there was certainly that. It was partnership, friendship, a meeting of minds and hearts that made each of them better, stronger, more whole. As sleep claimed her, safe in her husband's arms, Maria's last thought was one of pure contentment. She had come to Red Cloud seeking only survival and the chance to start over. Instead, she had found something infinitely more precious. A love story for the ages, a man who had taught a town respect by the simple act of walking beside her, and a family that would carry their legacy forward into the future. The years continued their steady march. Daniel grew into a fine young man, taking on more responsibility at the ranch and showing his father's integrity and his mother's business sense. Alina proved to have a gift with horses, training even the most difficult animals with patience and understanding. Thomas was the adventurous one, always exploring, always asking questions, keeping his parents on their toes. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Ethan and Maria traveled to Sterling for a celebration dinner, leaving the ranch in Daniel's capable hands. The restaurant where they dined was full of familiar faces from both towns, friends they had made over the years, people whose respect they had earned through consistent character and kindness. The owner of the restaurant, a man who had been among those refusing Maria service all those years ago, approached their table with a bottle of wine. "This is on the house," he said, his expression sincere. "I want to apologize, Mrs. Young, for my behavior when you first came to our area. I was wrong, and I have been ashamed of it for 20 years. You and Ethan have shown this community what real character looks like. Thank you for not giving up on us." Maria accepted the apology graciously, seeing in his eyes genuine remorse. "Thank you for saying so. We all have room to grow, to become better. The important thing is that we keep trying." After he left, Ethan raised his glass. "To 20 years of marriage, to the strongest woman I know, and to the life we have built together against all odds." Maria clinked her glass against his. "To the man who stood beside me when no one else would, who saw me when others only saw their own prejudices. To 20 more years and beyond." They drank, their eyes locked, and in that gaze passed 1,000 memories. That first meeting on the sidewalk, the confrontations in stores, the dance where they first kissed, the birth of their children, the countless small moments that had woven their lives together into something beautiful and unbreakable. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day?" Maria asked. "You called the town's treatment of me shameful." "I remember," Ethan said. "It was shameful, still makes me angry when I think about it." That one word spoken in my defense gave me hope," Maria said. "It told me that not everyone here was lost to prejudice, that there were still good people. It gave me the courage to keep fighting instead of running away. I do not think you will ever know how much that meant, Ethan." "I think I do know," Ethan said softly. "Because your courage in the face of that treatment inspired me just as much. You could have left, could have gone back to New Mexico or found another town. But you stayed, you held your head high, you refused to be defeated. That kind of strength is rare, Maria. It changed me watching you. It made me want to be better, to fight harder for what was right." They finished their dinner and walked through Sterling's quiet streets, hand in hand as they had done countless times before. The evening was mild, the sky beginning to show the first stars. Somewhere a dog barked, and they heard the distant sound of a piano from the saloon. 20 years, Maria mused. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like we were married yesterday. We have lived a lot in those 20 years, Ethan observed. Raised 3 children, built a successful ranch, made more friends than I can count. But the best part has been doing it all with you. They paused at the edge of town, looking out at the prairie that stretched in every direction. This land had tested them, challenged them, but it had also given them everything. A home, a purpose, a community. "I want you to know something," Maria said, turning to face her husband. "If I could go back and change how we started, if I could erase those difficult first months, I would not do it. Because those struggles forged us into who we are. They taught us what really matters. And they showed me beyond any doubt that I chose the right man to share my life with." Ethan pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her securely. "You are the love of my life, Maria Young. My partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, the person I want beside me through every joy and every challenge. I thank God every day that I had the courage to speak up that afternoon, that you gave me a chance to prove myself worthy of your trust." They kissed under the emerging stars, a kiss that held 20 years of love and the promise of many more to come. Then they climbed into their wagon for the journey home, riding through the darkness with the ease of people who knew every inch of the road, who could find their way home blindfolded, because home was not just a place, but a feeling they carried within them. When they arrived at the ranch, the house was lit with warm lamplight. Daniel had waited up to make sure they returned safely, a gesture of care that made Maria's heart swell with pride. Their children were good people, raised with love and the understanding that character mattered more than heritage, that respect was earned through actions and integrity. That night, lying in bed with Ethan's arms around her, Maria reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. From rejection and loneliness to love and belonging, from being a stranger in a hostile town to being a respected member of a thriving community. And through it all, the constant presence of the man beside her, the rancher who had walked with her until the town learned respect again. The seasons continued their eternal cycle. Springs brought new calves and planting. Summers meant long days of work under the blazing sun. Autumns brought harvest and preparation for winter. Winters tested their endurance and reminded them to be grateful for shelter and warmth. Through it all, Ethan and Maria remained devoted to each other and to the principles that had guided their lives. They raised their children with love and wisdom, teaching them to judge people by their character and to stand up for what was right even when it was difficult. Daniel eventually married a local girl, the daughter of a farmer, and they built a house on the edge of the young property. Elena found love with a doctor from Sterling, a kind man who supported her passion for horses. Thomas, true to his adventurous nature, traveled for a few years before returning home to help run the ranch, bringing with him a wife he had met in Denver. As grandchildren arrived, Ethan and Maria's joy multiplied. They watched their legacy expand, seeing their values passed on to a new generation. The grandchildren, with their mixed heritage visible in their features, grew up in a world slightly more tolerant than the one their grandmother had first encountered. though there was still work to be done. On Maria's 50th birthday, the community threw a celebration in her honor. The church hall was packed with friends and neighbors, people whose lives she had touched through her kindness, wisdom, and quiet strength. There were speeches praising her contributions to the community, her work establishing the school and library, her skill as a healer and advisor. But the moment that moved Maria most came when an elderly woman approached her with tears streaming down her face. "I was one of those who treated you poorly when you first arrived," the woman said. "I was ignorant and afraid, and I am ashamed of my behavior. But watching you and Ethan over the years, seeing the life you built and the love you shared, changed me. You taught me that we are all just people trying to make our way in the world, and that we should help each other rather than tear each other down. Thank you for that lesson, Mrs. Young. Thank you for not giving up on us." Maria embraced the woman, feeling the weight of old wounds finally healing completely. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "We all grow and learn. That is what life is about." That night, back at home with just Ethan for company, Maria sat in her favorite chair by the fireplace, feeling deeply content. Ethan sat across from her, reading, his glasses perched on his nose, his hair now more silver than brown. "What a day," Maria said with a happy sigh. Ethan looked up from his book, smiling. "You deserve every bit of recognition you received. You have done so much for this community, Maria. You have made such a difference." "We made a difference," Maria corrected. Together, Ethan agreed. He set aside his book and came to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "I know I tell you this often, but I want to say it again. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. Standing beside you, watching you bloom and flourish, seeing the impact you have had, not just on our family but on everyone around us. I am so proud to be your husband, Maria." Maria's eyes filled with tears. Even after all these years, Ethan's words had the power to move her, to make her feel cherished and valued. "And I am proud to be your wife. You gave me everything, Ethan. Not just material things, though the ranch and this life have been wonderful. But you gave me something more important. You gave me the courage to believe in myself, to believe I deserved respect and love. You stood beside me when the world was against me, and you never wavered. That is a gift beyond measure." They held each other in the firelight, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from nothing but love and determination. Outside, the Nebraska wind whispered across the prairie, carrying with it the scent of grass and earth and home. More years passed, gentle and sweet. Ethan and Maria grew older together, their bodies slowing but their love only deepening. They handed over more of the ranch responsibilities to Daniel and Thomas, content to spend their days in quieter pursuits. Tending Maria's garden, taking long, slow walks, sitting on the porch watching sunsets, playing with grandchildren who climbed on their laps and demanded stories. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. 3 generations filled the house with noise and laughter and love. Ethan and Maria sat at the head of the table, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and marveled at what they had created. Daniel stood to offer a toast. "To my parents," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You showed us what love really means, not just romance, though you certainly had that, but love as action, as standing beside someone through every challenge, as building something lasting together. You faced prejudice and hardship, and you met it with dignity and grace. You changed this community for the better, and you raised us to carry those values forward. Thank you for being the best example any children could hope for." Everyone raised their glasses, and Maria looked around the table through tears of joy. This was her legacy, Not just the successful ranch or the respect she had earned, but this family, these people who carried forward the lesson that love and integrity mattered most. That night, alone with Ethan, Maria said, "We did well, did we not?" "We did better than well," Ethan replied. "We did magnificently. Look at what we built, Maria. Look at these beautiful people who call us family. Every struggle, every hardship, it was all worth it." "I wish it could last forever," Maria said wistfully. "These perfect moments." "Nothing lasts forever," Ethan said gently. "But we have had more perfect moments than most people get in a lifetime, and we are not done yet. We still have time, my love. Time to enjoy these fruits of our labor, to watch our grandchildren grow, to sit together in the evening and remember all that we have shared." He was right. They had more years together, good years full of quiet contentment. They watched their grandchildren begin to make their own ways in the world. They saw Red Cloud and the surrounding communities continue to evolve, becoming more accepting and diverse. The story of the rancher and the Mexican woman he had defended became something of a local legend, told to newcomers as an example of the community's values. Some of the details became embellished over time, but the core remained true. A good man had stood beside someone being treated unjustly, and that simple act of courage had changed everything. When Ethan and Maria were both in their 70s, still living in their ranch house surrounded by family, they often sat together in the evenings reflecting on their extraordinary journey. Their bodies were slower, their hearing not as sharp, but their minds remained clear, and their love for each other burned as bright as ever. "You remember," Maria said one twilight evening, "when you first told me you were falling in love with me, at the dance?" "I remember everything about that night," Ethan said. "The way you looked in the lamplight, the feel of you in my arms, the fear that you might not feel the same way." "I was so scared," Maria admitted. "Scared to trust what I was feeling, scared to believe it could be real." "But you took the chance anyway," Ethan said. "That has always been your way, Maria, scared but brave, moving forward even when the path was uncertain." "I had a good reason to be brave," Maria said, squeezing his hand. "I had you walking beside me." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The land stretched out before them, this prairie that had become their home, that had tested them and rewarded them and given them everything that truly mattered. "I have no regrets," Ethan said suddenly. "I want you to know that. If I could live my life over, I would not change a single thing. Every moment with you has been a gift." "Nor would I change anything," Maria agreed. "Well, perhaps I would have told you I loved you sooner. But otherwise, everything has been exactly as it should be." The evening star appeared in the darkening sky, bright and constant. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, grandchildren who had come for supper, the ordinary, beautiful noise of a life well lived. Ethan and Maria grew very old together, their love a constant through every season of life. When Ethan's heart finally gave out at the age of 79, he died peacefully in his sleep with Maria beside him, his hand in hers. Maria held him close, grieving deeply but grateful beyond measure for the 57 years they had shared. The funeral drew people from all over the region, testimonies to Ethan's character and the impact he had made. But the story that was told most often was about the day he had stood beside a stranger on a Red Cloud sidewalk and refused to let injustice stand. That moment of courage had rippled outward in ways he could never have imagined, changing not just one woman's life but an entire community's soul. Maria lived another 5 years after Ethan's death, surrounded by loving family, her days gentle and peaceful. She spent her time in her garden with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and in quiet reflection on the incredible life she had been blessed to live. On a warm spring morning, sitting in the garden she had tended for more than half a century, Maria felt her time approaching. She was not afraid. She thought of Ethan waiting for her, imagined his smile, his strong arms ready to welcome her home. She thought of their journey together, from that first difficult day to the beautiful life they had built. She thought of love, how it had sustained her, transformed her, given meaning to everything. When her grandson found her an hour later, she looked peaceful, a smile on her face, her hands resting in her lap. The garden bloomed around her, flowers she had planted decades ago now in full glory, a living testament to patience and care and the miracle of growth. The family buried Maria beside Ethan on a hillside overlooking the ranch, their graves marked by a simple stone that read, Ethan and Maria Young. Together, they taught a town respect and showed us all what love truly means. Their story lived on, passed down through generations. The ranch remained in the family, worked by descendants who carried forward the values their remarkable ancestors had embodied. The little plot of land Maria had first purchased was preserved as well, the fruit trees she had planted grown tall and strong, bearing fruit every year. In Red Cloud, in Sterling, in all the communities touched by their presence, Ethan and Maria Young were remembered as an example of courage, integrity, and enduring love. School children learned about the rancher who stood beside a stranger, about the woman who refused to let prejudice defeat her, about how two people could change an entire town through the simple act of choosing love over fear. And on quiet evenings, when the wind whispered across the Nebraska prairie, some claimed they could feel the presence of that remarkable couple, still walking together through the land they had loved, still teaching by example, still showing the way forward for any who had the wisdom to learn from their story. Their legacy was not just in the successful ranch or the family they had raised, but in the fundamental truth they had proven. That one person's courage to stand against injustice, combined with one person's strength to persevere, could change the world. That love could triumph over prejudice. That respect, once lost, could be regained through patience and consistent character. That together, two people committed to each other and to what was right could move mountains. It was a love story for the ages, born from struggle and forged in fire, a testament to the best of human nature and the transformative power of standing beside someone when they need it most. And it all began on a dusty sidewalk in Red Cloud, Nebraska, in the summer of 1882, when a rancher saw injustice and decided to speak up, when a woman saw kindness and decided to trust it, and when two hearts recognized in each other the possibility of something extraordinary.